Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Food Rescue Hero Conference 2024. My name is Greg Austin. I'm the Director of Distribution Initiatives at 412 Food Rescue here in Pittsburgh, and I'll be your moderator today. This session, kicking off the conference, is focused on prepared foods, best practices from rescue to repurpose. Our speakers today have been asked to address the following. So there are many barriers to achieving food and nutrition security, such as limited time, cooking skills, access to kitchen equipment, etc. Prepared food can help address many of these challenges, but it can also be difficult to rescue. In this session, you'll hear from 3 organizations that specialize in rescuing prepared food and understand the unique benefits it offers to those in need. We'll learn how these organizations are overcoming the challenges of rescuing prepared food, and we'll gain practical ideas for implementing similar strategies in your own food recovery efforts. We'll be hearing from Katie Funk, the Inspire and Innovation Program Director at La Soup. We'll be hearing from Flory Pate, the Founder and Communications Director at Food Connection. And co-presenting will be Sarah Ramili and Jose Perez Vela. Sarah is from the University of Pittsburgh, the Assistant Director of Basic Needs, and Jose is the Sustainability Director at Chartwell's Higher Education. With that, I will hand the floor to Katie Funk.
Good morning, everyone. I think we're ready for my slides if they're coming up. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Funk. I'm the Inspire and Innovation Director at La Soup. My job is to teach other food rescue organizations or other nonprofits how to implement a kitchen into your rescue program, or a rescue into your kitchen program if you're really unique. Next slide, please. I thought it might be really helpful to start with a landscape of the supply side of food rescue to explain some of the reasons why we find that a chef-driven solution is helpful and how our model works for, it's not so much for us rescuing prepared foods as turning ingredients into prepared foods before we distribute them. So in the US, as you probably know, 40% of food produced ends up in the landfill. That's the equivalent of 32.6 million cars on the road. Obviously, that's harmful to the environment as well as a waste of resources and labor. Especially when we have so many people who are experiencing food insecurity in our communities. Next slide, please. So of the surplus that we have, only 2.1% is donated. And that's for a lot of different reasons, some of them good, some of them not so good. Next slide, please. So we wouldn't want to take food that was spoiled or had food safety concerns, for example, but across the supply chain, there's lots of available foods that don't fall into those categories. So most is excess, trimming, or byproducts, or food that's just turned under on our farms. There's date label concerns that are more about the label than the actual safety of the food itself. Mistakes and malfunctions that may just have to do with recipes not matching what brands want rather than an actual food safety concern. And then you've got a little bit of a summary of the product mix on the right there. All these stats are from Refed. Next slide, please. So in terms of uses for surplus, the best place to send them is to donate or upcycle them, or to prevent them in the first place is the best. But once you have them, the best thing to do is to donate or upcycle them. And we know that there's plenty of resources to get enough food to people who need it in this country. So we use a chef-driven model that incorporates all elements of the food recovery hierarchy. We send food that isn't dignified for people to feed animals or to composters. We're working to partner with an anaerobic digester when they come to our area. But we really work to divert food to its highest and best use here. Next slide, please. So there's also a need for prepared food in the food access system itself. So roughly 50% of people who go to a pantry or a food access point, could be a library, could be a place where they live, prefer a prepared dish, and at least 10% of people who go to those places require one due to a physical or mental disability, a time of crisis in their life, or the lack of knowledge and equipment to prepare the foods available to them well. That comes from a study out of Second Harvest Heartland in the Twin Cities with Boston Consulting Group. Prepared dishes, prepared thoughtfully, can also ensure a balanced nutrition that isn't necessarily there if you're just handing out sweet potatoes or bananas or sausage. And having a central location can be a great clearinghouse to intentionally match product to the needs of the organizations that you're working with. Next slide. So we use chefs as a solution. So professional chefs transform food from across the supply chain. We focus further up in the supply chain at those manufacturers, co-packers, distributors. It comes to our location in Cincinnati. We have roughly 15,000 square feet here, where volunteers and staff turn it into healthy dishes that then go out to other agencies in the community. This shifts the burden of dealing with mispackaged, ugly, near end of life bulk foods away from volunteers at pantries in different places that tend to be overburdened and toward trained professionals, and then matches the right products with the right places. Le Soup and community kitchens around the world do this kind of work, and would be happy to talk to you more about it if you're interested. Next slide, please. So a little bit more nitty-gritty about how we do what we do. We've been around for about 9 years. We have 42 full-time employees and an absolute army of volunteers that make what we do possible. $3.5 million annual cash budget, and 6 programs. So Rescue, Transform, Share is kind of lumped into one. That's the core of what we do. That's kind of what I've been talking to you about, taking food from across the supply chain, using those chefs to turn it into healthy meals, and then sharing it with other organizations in the community. We also have an Educate program that focuses on cooking classes that are really appropriate for families. So reducing waste, but also just teaching the skills to have people cooking at home and those self-sufficiency. And then our medically tailored meals and food as medicine program is our Nourish program, which works with healthcare providers to create meals for people as part of their care plan. And then that's reimbursed by payers. And we're helping people, particularly with diabetes and heart disease, eat to prevent their diseases from getting worse. So that's a really exciting program. And then lastly, my program is working with other organizations in other cities to create a network of commissary organizations like us and build capacity in smaller organizations that are looking to do so. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of sustainability benefits to an organization like ours. It maximizes food utilization. We measure everything that comes through and report back to our supplying organizations, which can help them green up their supply chains and order the right amount of food for the amount of people that are purchasing. We recycle lots of different items that aren't able to be recycled here curbside, such as gloves, markers, and bottle caps. We cook with full ingredients such as stems, roots, bones, the cosmetically imperfect. They're traditions that have been around in our cultures for a very long time to fully utilize food. So going back to that, I think is kind of a special thing. And then animals not fit for human consumption are sent to animals in compost. And we optimize delivery runs, package for trust, and build partnerships with local sustainability partners. Next slide, please. So our mission is to bridge the gap between food waste and hunger by rescuing food to create delicious, nutritious meals for our community members. And our Inspire Network purpose is to expand Le Soup's impact by creating a network of partnerships that empower food rescue organizations to expand or develop chef-driven rescue, transform, share models. And it doesn't have to be limited to the state, although that is in this slide. Next slide, please. So here at Le Soup in 2023, our fiscal year ends in June. So it just ended. It was 1.28 million pounds of food rescued and created 1.1 million servings. We finished our first cohort of 4 organizations in the capacity building program. and recruited 3 new organizations to be a part of the program. So we now have partners in Denver, Toledo, Dayton, Columbus, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Baton Rouge, Hocking, Ohio, which is in Appalachia, our first rural partner, which we're really excited about, and Cleveland. Next slide, please. So key practices, and I know I'm running up on time here soon, but key practices to create and distribute prepared food that we've found include utilizing professionals, especially professional chefs, with a lot of knowledge of quality and safety, having a central location as a clearinghouse so that you're giving partners the products that they really want, and then understanding their preferences to make sure you're really giving them what they want. Ensuring consistent high quality packaging. We've tried using rescue packaging or various packaging in the past, and it's affected trust in the quality of our product, and that's not what we want. Working with the health department to make sure that you're on top of safe practices in your facility, just like a restaurant would. Freezing and preserving food before distribution has been really important for us, both because it reduces messes in cars. We work a lot with kids centers, and so kids taking home soups and meals that aren't frozen can create quite a mess. When it's frozen, things get a little bit less complicated. It also preserves the food better. People can defrost and eat whenever it's appropriate for them, rather than needing to eat it in the next few days. Repackaging bulk snacks. We get a lot of like vegetables and starches that come in on Gaylords, like 2,000 pounds worth of food that might be too much for your typical pantry. So repackaging those and sending them out if we're not using them in our meals. And then hiring staff, particularly on your dock and operations teams that are flexible and looking to do batch cooking and really interested in the mission, because sometimes it's a little messy. And then developing processes as you grow to prioritize turning inventory and the safe use of food. Next slide, please. Key challenges are probably similar to the challenges that any of you face with a food rescue organization. Many pieces of our food system are just set up to tolerate a pretty significant amount of waste. It's kind of built into the system. So while people think it's a good idea, sometimes convincing them to spend money to reduce waste in their facilities can be an uphill battle. And many manufacturers and suppliers, especially of bulk food, don't see how much waste is in their facility until they really start looking for it with a fine-tooth comb. They think they're much cleaner supply chains sometimes than there are. Emergency food infrastructure is very set up for redistribution rather than a commissary or a chef-driven model. And the funding isn't necessarily set up for an organization like ours because we're a little bit different. Food must be high quality, otherwise you're moving things around and not really creating a benefit for people. And then accepting bulk foods obviously requires space, cold storage, trucks or truck partnerships and staff. And then inventory turnover must happen quickly or else you're gonna have no place to put the food and food can go bad. So that's a quick summary. Looking forward to talking more down the line. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you. I've neglected to thank all of you for being here, viewers and presenters alike, but my apologies for that. We're really, really grateful to have you all here. I also want to throw a quick reminder that there is time at the end of our session for a Q&A, which we will do through the chat for all of our viewers. So thank you again, Katie. And with that, I will pass the floor to Flory Pate, excuse me.
Hello, everybody. Greg, thank you for moderating, and it's an honor to be here alongside Katie and Sarah and Jose. So next. So apparently, if anyone's here in this lecture, you're all about reducing food waste and easing hunger. And we started Food Connection 10 years ago after learning how much food was being wasted after catered events in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where we're located. Next. So does anybody recognize this man? Mr. Bill Emerson, and he's who we can thank for the Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, which was passed in '96 during the Clinton administration. And when we started approaching chefs around Asheville, and telling them they can donate their food. They don't have to throw it away any longer. I think every single one of them said, nope, it's illegal. It's illegal in North Carolina. We can't do it. And one thing that we did a lot of was educating people about this law. And the sad thing is nobody knew about it, but now people do, and we're getting a lot more food donated. Next. So we just work with freshly prepared meals from commercial kitchens. So universities, institutions like retirement centers, there's so many catering events around here, hotels, conferences, things like that. And so food that hasn't even left the kitchen. And why is there so much food? Well, if someone's paying $150 a head for a wedding, the worst thing that could happen would be that you run out of food. So everybody's producing more than they could possibly use. Next. So looks like we're having a little problem loading. But we have gone to certain camps and conferences where we've rescued as many as 1,000 pounds of food in a single day. And traditionally, we take those large hotel pans directly to nonprofit partners. So rescue missions, Salvation Army, women's shelters, things like that, because they're large pans. And then to serve individuals, you could never give them a hotel pan that would feed 30 people and expect their family to use it all without it going to waste. Then during COVID, we started doing individual meals just for safety reasons. And then we were able to reach a whole new audience of folks that we couldn't reach before with the large hotel pans. So we were committed. This is our mobile meals program, which we were definitely committed to working with. Let's see. So then we got this brick and mortar less than 2 years ago, and it was a game changer for us. So we now have freezer space and refrigerators. And next, please. We're able to have volunteers and staff come in and take the large hotel pans of food and make these individual meals for us. Next. We also have 2 of these refrigerated trailers that are in our parking lot, and we think this is very scalable to, we're about to launch in a neighboring county, and we have one of these trailers that will move there. It has a keypad on it, and so if at the end of a catering event, if a food donor partner wanted to donate directly instead of having it in their facility overnight, they could just come go in the keypad, log what they're dropping off, and then shut it back up. And then in the same fashion, we have certain organizations that are smaller, like recovery centers, that might be serving 10 folks that might need 10 meals. And so we'll pull those aside and put a sticky note on them, and then they can just come and get them whatever time is convenient. So the mobile trailers work really well. Next. We also have this food truck that we've had for 2 years, and we are not sure that there's anyone else currently doing this. This is, it looks like a traditional food truck, and it is just full of cold storage. We decided when we launched this that we would not serve hot meals because it's rescued food, that it would be a safer thing just to serve heat and serve meals. And they each have a sticker on them that say, heat to 165 degrees and use by, because we know exactly about the prepared on dates as the food comes in. And we are sending this out to communities. We're going directly into neighborhoods. And this is a very dignified, equitable way to serve our neighbors, because a lot of people can't afford to go to a food truck in Asheville. And we have lights and music, and it's a really festive scene. Next. We also always have a menu, and of course with rescued food, you never know what it's going to be until like moments before sometimes, or the day before. So we like to always offer a vegetarian option and give our neighbors choices when they come to our food truck. Next. We take pride in making beautiful meals that people will enjoy, and they're usually about a pound or a pound and a half a piece. And they always include a protein, a starch, and a vegetable, and occasionally an edible orchid if we have a really fancy event where someone's donating food. Next. Next. So, and we've always operated at Food Connection that food should be for everyone, that access to delicious food is a human right. Next. So whenever anyone comes to our drive-through, the only questions that we ask of them is which meals they would like. And next. So our mobile meals truck has our regular stops. We go directly into neighborhoods, and then we're also going to after-school programs, affordable after-school programs. And I encourage you all, if you have time, to go to our website and watch video to hear some testimonials from some of the folks we're serving. This dad has 3 kids, and he loves Wednesdays because he says it means he doesn't have to cook or worry about what's for dinner that night. Next. And this mom was talking about her little girl, how she's a picky eater, but she said she's been really surprised by the mobile meals of the foods that her daughter likes. And she says, like, she loves the asparagus. Next. And we're hearing frequently about kids who, and their parents say that, well, you know, they've never had access to this before. We were really surprised that they like this. And so it's really influencing palates on some healthy foods that otherwise would have been thrown away, getting to our neighbors who most need them. Next. So our Food Connection stats, since we launched our program, we have rescued and delivered 650,000 meals, and we estimate that that's kept about 265 chef-prepared meals out of our Buncombe County landfill. Next. So we currently have 29 food donor partners, and we connect with 25 nonprofit partners where they get the large hotel pans to serve their clients. And we have 26 mobile meals distributions, which serve youth, our rural neighbors, the community connectors, recovery groups, and specifically seniors. Next. I know that in this group, we can all probably agree with this. This is on one of our tablecloths, that we believe that no fresh food should ever end up in the trash while people go hungry. And if you think about it, that's the most simple thing in the world. But I'm sure my other panelists will agree, next, that the logistics are extremely complex when you're working with multiple food donors and the food is highly perishable and it needs to get out quickly. Next, we have just implemented this Odoo tracking software, but I wish I could report to you that it's the best thing ever, but it's brand new. So we will have to get back to you on that, but we're really excited and hopeful about it. Next. So this is Susie, and she is one of our neighbors that lives in the Leicester community. And I had the pleasure of interviewing her, and it's on our website, 2 months ago. And she said that she's retired, worked for years, and she's living on Social Security, but it's not enough for her to make ends meet. She said through getting the mobile meals from Food Connection that she and her family are able to maintain their way of life, which they weren't able to do before, and that her favorite meal is trout. So this was 2 months ago. Next. I just threw this slide in at the last minute. Many of you may have heard that our area has gone through a very big natural disaster. And so these were some thoughts that I had about it that really make no sense at all to me, or many of us, that any person in our country would not have enough food to eat when there's an abundance. And I know Katie mentioned this. and that we are throwing away 40% of our food supply, and that food rotting in the landfill releases methane gas, which is contributing to global warming, and it's contributing to the catastrophic weather patterns that are disproportionately affecting our neighbors who live in poverty and don't have enough food to eat. So this is why we do what we do. We are making the food connections. Next. This is just one area of Asheville, and this was a month ago today, where Helene made the rivers rise in ways that literally washed away whole communities in our mountains. And the River Arch District isn't even there anymore. Today, we have no potable water today. And the need for meals for people living on the edge have greatly increased. They were already like 14% food insecurity rate. But I'm so glad Food Connection is established here in Asheville, because daily for the past month, we've been getting calls from World Central Kitchen and Mercy Chefs, who are here doing incredible work, making meals for our community. But again, they're not sure about how many to make, and they always make more than they could possibly use. And they're calling Food Connection every day. So our output of meals during this crisis have tripled. Next. So we want all of our neighbors to know that they're loved, they're not forgotten, and that we're here for the long haul to take care of them during this disaster relief period. Next. And this is my personal email. We're running a food relief or relief meals campaign right now, and I would urge you to go to our website and just learn more about what we're doing. And again, I thank you all for having Food Connection represented here.
Thank you so much, Flory. Our hearts go out to you and your neighbors in Asheville in the wake of disaster. Keep up the great work, obviously. I will hand the floor to Jose and Sarah.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to switch it up a little bit and just give a perspective from the University of Pittsburgh through higher education. There we go. There's our slides. You can go to the next slide. I think the next two slides. Yep. So if you're not familiar with the University of Pittsburgh, we're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The university does have several branch campuses, but we are going to focus on the main campus, which is in Pittsburgh's Oakland neighborhood. We are a large urban campus surrounded by the city. We have 17 colleges and schools. You can see here our numbers. We are just below 30,000 total enrollment. And again, that's just for the main campus. See our different stats there. What's also notable is we do have a large population of international students at about roughly 2,700. Next. So to give you a little bit of landscape of what our food and dining is on campus. So Chartwell's Higher Education operates Pitt Eats. So there are two main dining halls on campus, as well as several coffee carts and restaurant-style dining options. Those are all kind of your traditional college dining that you have a meal plan that gets you access to those places. Food security is something that is very prevalent in college campuses. It's often not talked about. It's often overlooked. A lot of people assume, college students, their parents are paying for their education, or they have financial aid that pays for everything. So a lot of people don't necessarily realize that food insecurity is a problem for a lot of college students. To combat that, the university does have the Pitt Pantry. It's our on-campus food pantry. We provide fresh produce, frozen meat, shelf staples, as well as hygiene items. It's free for students. They can shop twice a month. We don't verify income. They don't need an appointment. They can literally just show up during our open shopping hours and shop for free. In addition to the pit pantry, the items that I listed that we have, we also do a lot of food recovery in there, rescuing food from Panera, from local hospitals in the community, and a few other local vendors. We've also been really focusing on SNAP outreach this year. A lot of college students are eligible for SNAP, but just aren't aware of it, or the application and eligibility criteria are very confusing. So that is something we've had a targeted attempt at outreaching this year. Our campus also offers emergency meal assistance. So this is for students who are most vulnerable to being hungry and to not having enough food access. It's a scholarship-based application process. Student has to demonstrate a financial or nutritional need. And then if approved, they can receive up to 30 free meal swipes to use at the various Pitt Eats dining facilities mentioned above. Really, our presentation is going to focus on food lockers. So this is a brand new initiative that we launched last November. We purchased temperature-controlled food lockers that are on a central place on campus, and it is now a joint food recovery, sustainability, as well as a food security initiative. So next slide, and I believe, oh no, I think I have one more slide. So for this initiative, I just kind of want to highlight a few campus partners that were involved in this project. It was definitely not a project that just one department, one person, one unit could take. It would definitely required a lot of collaboration. So that included the Chartwell's team, the Pitt Eats team, which is Jose's team. He'll speak to that a little bit. Our business, hospitality, and auxiliaries team. This was a big project for student affairs. Pitt also has a student organization, Food Recovery Heroes, and of course our Pitt Pantry. So now I think next slide, and I'll pass it over to Jose.
Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, so the Chartwell's Higher Education, we are a national food service provider across different colleges and universities in the nation. So you mentioned already our partnership, and we love to harp on the partnership here with the university, our client, and the Food Recovery Heroes, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But we did receive grant funding from the Hunger Free Campus Initiative that supported the purchasing of these temperature-controlled food lockers. There's a picture of them here on the right. And again, this project would not have been possible without the collaboration of student affairs with Sarah's team, the business, hospitality, and auxiliary services on campus, and our team with Chartwell's or Pitt Eats. These lockers are a shared program between the Pitt Pantry and our other Pitt Eats retail and grocery delivery programs. And we love to touch on this because it does promote the confidentiality of students who are looking for assistance, and it reduces that stigma of reaching out and asking for help or assistance, right? So this program here, if we go to the next slide, you can see some graphics there. We never like to call out the Pitt Pantry on the lockers or near the lockers. We touch on the mobile access. And so I think that's the next slide. So give me 1 second. I'll touch on the mobile access in a second, but let's go back to the other one. Sorry. Okay, so the Food Recovery Heroes are a extension of the Food Recovery Network. They're a student organization on campus that make this whole program possible. We always love to shout out our students because they work so hard Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. They're very punctual and very, very passionate about food recovery. They focus on food recovery all across campus. But for this program specifically, they help us recover food that's left over from our dining service the day before, the night before, or that same day from the eatery, that being our larger all-you-care-to-eat dining hall on campus. So with their help, they help us promote food recovery and reduce the food that would otherwise be thrown away and end up in our landfills. And as Flory mentioned, contributing to greenhouse gases and global warming. So what the food recovery heroes themselves do is they come in and we have all the food ready for them. And they have a ton of volunteers that come in and package all the food into individual meals and load it into the lockers, as you can see in the picture there. So we'll jump to the next slide. And Sarah does pull, Sarah, you might want to talk more about this later, but the link to feed is what Sarah works with to pull the list of students, faculty, or staff to add to this registry, the shopping list, the shopper list for the pit pantry meals. The reason I say that is we do use Transact as our POS system across campus. So that is a mobile ordering app that we have students, faculty, and staff can place orders all across campus for our retail. They can even place a mobile order to order ahead and continue on with studying in classes and stuff. But we added the lockers as an option for food delivery. So now students can actually place an order for their retail locations or even for groceries and have them delivered to the lockers. The other piece, of course, is the pit pantry meals, which is why we don't like to call out the pit pantry lockers at or near the lockers, so that students can kind of stay in between all these other programs that are happening. Students can place one free meal every day from Monday through Friday. And again, this locker, the list of these shoppers is worked through with Sarah and the pit pantry. I think next slide. So some quick results here. As Sarah mentioned, we did launch the lockers in November of 2023, and just in that short month, we saw a total of 110 orders that were placed. We also saw about 29 users and a success rate of about 75%, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But in the spring semester, so going from January to about May or so, we saw that jump all the way up to 892 orders over just one semester. The success rate jumped up over 10%, and then we nearly doubled our users as well. So the reason we have that success rate there is these lockers, of course, are a delivery program. They are temperature controlled, but one thing we learned from these lockers, and this is just a specific hardware that we purchased, is that we have temperature controlling, not temperature monitoring. And that's a very, very crucial piece to food recovery, as all my panelists here can attest to. We want to make sure we are always ensuring food safety across the board, no matter where it's going, whether it's going through a profit or if it's going through a donation. And so that said, we do have access to lock the lockers out after 4 hours to ensure that food safety piece. And so if students, faculty, or staff essentially don't pick up their meal within that time frame, we lock it out and they're not able to pick up the order, which in turn we have to throw out. So that said, we have seen a huge success in messaging. Sarah has been working really hard to ensure that we are reminding students and shoppers to pick up their meals before it gets thrown out. And with just that little piece of messaging, we've seen a 10% jump in successfully picked up meals. Another piece is the learning curve that comes with technology as a whole. As I mentioned, we have Transact on campus, but we also have these lockers that are not Transact-based companies. So working with two different companies and trying to ensure that the software are communicating with each other has been a challenge in the past. And we have luckily had a great team that has helped communicate that with not just the shoppers, but troubleshoot it on the back end as well. And then the last piece is with food recovery. Of course, one thing we've been working really hard on in messaging through Sarah specifically in the shoppers list is reminding our shoppers that this is food that is recovered from our dining halls. As I think it was Flory that mentioned, we sometimes don't know what food that's going to be until day of or a couple hours before we start loading them. So it's harder and challenging to accommodate to dietary needs and dietary restrictions. So that's one thing we've been working on and we've realized is how do we do this when we don't know what's going to be left over for that day. So next slide, and I think Sarah, you'll touch on this one.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Jose. Just to touch on the link to feed that they made be something people aren't familiar with. Link to Feed is just a database system that a lot of food pantries use to track shoppers. So as Jose mentioned, these lockers are shared between Pit Pantry as well as just general retail. Through the Pit Pantry, I'm able to pull a list of students that are food insecure or add students that I've personally worked with to give them special access to order the free meals, whereas the other half of the lockers are used for paid for purchased orders. So that way there's that confidentiality. If somebody's going to a locker to pick up a meal, you don't know, was it paid for through retail or was it free from the Pit Pantry? So it reduces that stigma. Just kind of like one wrap-up slide is, this really was a long-term project that probably started 2 or 3 years ago when the idea was first conceptualized. It took a couple years worth of planning. Once we did implement in the fall of 23, it was somewhat of a soft launch, and then we were able to gradually ramp up the activity as we were kind of working through different bugs and different issues that would arise. So, just kind of our general advice for anybody, whether you're a college campus or a community program looking to start something similar, it really is about collaborating with different departments, pulling strengths from different areas, examining what resources you have, what is your capacity and where maybe your weaknesses are. It takes a lot of communication. As we've kind of mentioned, I work directly for the University of Pittsburgh, whereas Jose works for Chartwell's Higher Education. So there's just a lot of communication back and forth between both parties. I kind of service more the student end, whereas Chartwell's takes a little bit more ownership over the technology as well as the food production. And then, really third piece of advice is just be adaptable and flexible. Anticipate some things going wrong, anticipate learning new things that you weren't expecting, and really just staying flexible. And I believe that's our presentation.
Thank you so much, Jose and Sarah. So that concludes the speaker portion, and we will get into Q&A. Everyone has been active in the chat. Some of this is question, which I'll bring to our Q&A session. I do encourage our speakers to just take a look through the chat because some of this is a little more direct, maybe for you to connect with these folks after. I'll ask our viewers, please, if you'd like to put your organization name in your question. It may be easier for me to call you out that way for later connection with our speakers than for me to mispronounce your names. So we'll just go straight from the top here. The first question that has come through is for Katie regarding your program teaching food rescues how to incorporate kitchens. Martha Elder is wondering if you charge for that service. Okay, I think you're muted.
Hi, so good question. Yeah, thank you for that. We do, there's a fee. It's small in comparison to the cost of running the program, and it's mostly to ensure that we're getting organizations with a bit of a backbone in place, because it does take some investment and a significant amount of staff time. We only accept up to 6 organizations into that program, and it is a program that runs annually at this time. And I'm happy to jump into more details with you offline if you like.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Our next question is for Flory. Could you please talk more about how you balance dignity of your recipients with the supporters' desire to see and hear from recipients?
That's such a great question. About a month ago or a month and a half ago, we had our largest fundraiser, and it's so important for us because just to get the money to keep the program going. And we know that the supporters want to hear from our neighbors, but it just didn't feel right to parade someone up on stage to talk. So we've developed relationships by going into communities, and we always ask, like, hey, we're trying to get some testimonials. Do you feel like talking? It's no pressure if you don't. And we just respect what they say. And so that's how I got the footage for our recent testimonial video. But it's hard because you don't want to make anyone feel exploited. But you're right that supporters, they can hear from you and be inspired, but they also really definitely want to hear from the folks who are on the receiving end of the meals.
Absolutely. Thank you, Flory. And then this question is for Sarah and Jose. Magda is looking for the vendor for those temperature-controlled lockers that you're using.
Yeah, I can touch on that if you want, Sarah. We did see a long list of different vendors that we could pick from. Ultimately, we were looking for a locker system that had both heating and cooling and ambient temperature controlling. So the vendor that we went with was Ondo Lockers. You might hear them go by Mighty Oaks as well. Or RPI Industries. They have a couple names, but Ondo Support Lockers is basically the vendor that we chose to go with. Good question.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then I'm actually going to bring some questions from Dana, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but you all got to meet with Dana, and Dana was very excited about all of your work and left a lot of really great notes for me to be able to do this with you today. So this is for all of our speakers. What do you, from your vantage point at your organization, see as the most significant barriers to businesses donating surplus food?
I can get us started with that. So at Pitt, at the university, whenever the food is coming directly from a dining hall kitchen to us, that's really no problem because it's temperature controlled, it's served safe, it's coming from a kitchen that has all the proper credentials. Where we often run into problems with food recovery, is we have a lot of events all around campus, a lot of student organizations having events where they order food, or different departments having catering. The challenge for us is whenever the food leaves the kitchen to go to an event where it is no longer supervised, it's no longer being monitored for temperature and time control. There's often a lot of leftovers at these events, and people have come to the pantry of like, hey, are we able to donate some of this? We've often had to say no because of the risk of foodborne illness, and we can no longer guarantee that food was held at proper temperatures. So for us, it's been a lot of trying to educate departments and student groups who put on these events of, be a little bit more modest with how much you order, like kind of cut it off right from the source of maybe don't order as much food as you think you may need, or for that department to kind of have their own takeout containers kind of on standby that, hey, the event's wrapping up, pass out to-go containers to the people that attended the event, to the students that were there, and just take that food home directly.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of that, Sarah. I think when we do special events or rescue from caterings, we see a lot of that same thing. Our rule is generally anything that's been out and on a buffet line serving people or been out of refrigeration, we can't take. So if there's a full backup macaroni and cheese tray, we'll take something like that. But if it's been out and served to the public, the advice that we've gotten from the health department and things like that, that's just not where we really operate. I think for us, there's also just like the logistics and transportation, especially when we're working with some of the bigger manufacturers in our region. The onus being on the nonprofit to go and pick up regularly. We have a fleet of 4 refrigerated 2-box trucks and 2 refrigerated vans, and then we have a minivan for like smaller dry goods pickups, things like that. But coordinating when those trucks can be where and how far they have to go to pick up from a manufacturer, like that transit falling on the nonprofit can be a big challenge. And the logistics of all of that. We love our donating suppliers, but sometimes if there's a line or a busy day, the truck that they're donating to can be pushed to the end of the line and things like that. And I don't think that's super intentional, but I think that's kind of the nature of the work sometimes. And when we're already slammed and trying to get those trucks to different places, it can be a big challenge. And then to Sarah's point, just making sure that all of our different partners at different places in the supply chain understand what our standard is around food safety is really important, but challenging.
I think that significant barriers to getting food, people to donate food, it was at the beginning, what I mentioned in my slideshow about people feeling like it was illegal. And then slowly people would become food donors. And then it's like disrupting the habit of, okay, you know, this dinner service is over, let's scrape it all in the trash, because they do have to get out their recyclable pans and put it in that and label it and put it in the fridge to cold chill it. So there's extra steps in the kitchen. But then when we go back and we meet with the kitchen staff and just say, hey, let me tell you about these kids that got your leftover lasagna or whatever, and how much it meant to them and what the feedback that we're getting. And then people have disrupted one way that they were doing work in order to feed the community. There's also social media, I feel like, with small businesses, even big businesses, to celebrate them being a food donor and doing the right thing can not only boost their business, but it can also influence other people to donate. And I'll tell you one quick funny story. We were trying so hard to get the Omni Grove Park Inn to donate their food because they just have a ton at their hotel. And finally, after years, I got through to the right person, and I slid over our one sheet that's like, this is what you have to do to be a food donor, the food safety checkbox. They signed it, and then they slid back like a 40-page contract for Food Connection to sign saying you won't come after us and sue us. And we gladly signed that. But I think if you can get some really big businesses to come on board as food donors, that also influences the smaller businesses to do the right thing and donate. And I don't think that we've mentioned that by donating food, you get a tax benefit. It's a tax deduction. So I feel like anybody who has surplus food, there's multiple reasons to donate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Flory. I'm being told that we are just about up for time. I'm so sorry for the questions we weren't able to get to. I'd like to thank you once again, all of our speakers, Flory, Sarah, Jose, Katie. Thank you so much for being here, being a part of the Food Rescue Conference. Thank you to all of our viewers. I just want to throw a reminder to join our next session, Serving People Where They Are. There, thank you so much, Patrick. Minds are melting together here. And please fill out your session surveys. I thank you so much for attending and enjoy the rest of the Food Rescue Conference. Thanks again to all of you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
And please email me with questions. That would be great.
Yes, perfect. Thanks so much. Be well.